people. Yeah, it is your good friend Chad Marco here again with another awesome anime review for you guys. Now today it is truly an honor to review one of the greatest anime of all time, truly a fucking classic, Ashita No Joe. Ooh, that felt good. I used to always pronounce it Ashita No Joe, and looking back, it doesn't really make sense because it's not like it's ASHITA. It's not like S8. It's not ASHEETA. Ashita. Oh man, it would have been better if I thought it was Ashita, but I was paying attention to the opening and I noticed that the guy that was singing the opening song, he pronounced it Ashita. Like it's really quick. It's like Ashita. It's not like Ashita or Ashada. It's Ashita. And that makes sense because, Japanese people, they pronounce things as like a very eloquent type of way. I just love saying it. I'm going to say it a couple more times. Ashita. Ashita No Joe. Ashita. Ashita. It's so awesome. But yeah, man, like this is a fucking classic, man. Ashita No Joe, definitely, it is. This is an anime that you can definitely see that like certain touches, certain parts of this you can see in other types of anime, like especially like Gurren Lagann. I know there like several scenes that are very reminiscent of Ashita No Joe. Well, I just pronounced it the wrong way again. Ashita No Joe. Certain scenes within Gurren Lagann are definitely very reminiscent of what I've seen. Certain scenes in Ashita No Joe, particularly like the cross counter. There was a part in Gurren Lagann where they got into the fight with Vero and they did like the cross counter in the beginning of the fight once they combined, and then the whole like pig escape during the beginning of the first episode, and they're trying to escape from the Jiha village. The ending of Ashita No Joe, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, man, you can tell that Ashita No Joe has definitely influenced several different anime during the course of time. But let me just talk about Ashita No Joe a little bit. If you don't know, Ashita No Joe is a boxing anime. I'm pretty fucking sure I don't need to explain what the hell boxing is, but for those who've been under a rock, boxing is it's a sport. I find it funny when people call boxing a sport. I mean, I know it's technically a sport, but it's like, man, especially like an anime like this, it really makes it seem like it's just like glorified gladiator bouts, man. Just glorified fighting, really, just with gloves. The gloves make it seem more civilized, but it's still such a hellish world. I mean, it's so brutal. I mean, you can really literally lose your life playing this sport. Even saying playing in regard to boxing just doesn't sound right, but I'm sure you guys know what the fuck boxing is. It's a fighting combat sport, similar to Muay Thai, mixed martial arts, judo, wrestling, or whatever. But the thing about boxing is completely hand-to-hand combat. There's no kicking, there's no grappling other than clinching. And even clinching is mostly for just like your own personal safety. Like you might get in too close, so you just clinch, or you tired, so you clinch. So it's strictly hand-to-hand combat. But I'm not gonna go too in depth with that, 'cause I'm sure you guys know what the fuck boxing is. But now let's just go into the plot of Ashita No Joe, and a little couple details about it. Now, Ashita No Joe was written by a manga dude, a mangaka, is that what they call him? Mangaka. It was written by Iki Kajiwara during the late 1960s. And man, I had no idea. Like, I was just like, I went to the Wikipedia page, like just looking for information on this before I did my review. And I didn't know this, but the guy who wrote this, like he died kind of young. Like he died like, well, not young, but like at age 50 or something, man. Like, yeah, that's kind of sad. And then on top of that, like he had a daughter who was like kidnapped and tortured and shit like that. I just wanted some basic info, and I found out like this dude had like a tragic fucking life and shit. But yeah, man. It was written by Iki Kajiwara, but the actual anime didn't come out until I think 1970. That's when the anime came out. Of course, usually the manga tends to precede the anime, but of course, this is an anime review show, so that's what we're going to talk about. So, of course, let's get to the nitty gritty now. Ashita No Joe is a boxing anime about a young man named Joe. Well, Joe Yabuki. Now, Joe Yabuki, he's about 15 years old. When he was a kid, he escaped from an orphanage. I guess he didn't like it there, and pretty much ever since then, he's just been wandering Japan all on his own, just surviving day by day, relying on nothing but his wits and his fists to get by. And one day he wanders into this town and just going about his own business, and he notices that these guys are picking on this little girl. These guys are apparently a part of a Yakuza gang. So Joe, he has a soft spot for kids, so he sees this, and he's not gonna let this fly. So he goes up to the Yakuza. He beats their fucking ass. I mean, man, he whooped their ass thoroughly. But yeah, but while he's fighting the Yakuza, there's a drunk man nearby watching this whole scene unfold. Now, this drunk, he's not just any old drunk. This guy, he used to be a boxer, and after suffering too many injuries, he became a boxing coach. But he could never find a fighter that he felt like had, like, the eye of the tiger. He never had a fighter that he felt was like a natural, someone that just was a natural beast in the ring, someone that was born to be a fighter. Like, some people just get into boxing, for the sake of the sport of it, or to learn self-defense, stuff like that. But then other people, it's almost like they're born to be boxers. And when this drunk, well, let's go ahead and name him. His name is Danpei. When Danpei sees Joe fighting these Yakuza, he instantly realizes, like, this is my guy. This guy has the eye of the fucking tiger. This guy, I can use him. So he's watching Joe fight, and he's just like, yeah. And of course, Joe, he wins the battle or whatnot. So then Danpei approaches Joe about possibly becoming a boxer. Now, Joe, this guy, this kid, he's a rolling stone, man. He's not trying to become a boxer for this old man. Like, I don't even know you, you drunk bitch. Like, get out of my face. So of course, Joe, being a wild child that he is, he's untamed and can't settle down and all that shit. He ain't trying to hear this. So obviously he rejects Danpei, but Danpei is one persistent guy. He knows, like, this is it. This is my ticket to the big time. Like, this guy, if I miss out on this opportunity, I may never find one like this again. So he's very persistent. So he's following Joe around town, and Joe, being homeless, he's trying to find like a place to stay at night, but he can't because he doesn't have any money. And Danpei is trying to get on his good side, so he notices that Joe is like sleeping by the river. He gives him some food and gives him his jacket because it's cold at night. He's really doing everything to convince this young man to begin to box. He goes as far as to immediately quit alcohol. He was talking to his other drunk buddies. They were trying to give him a drink, and he was like, no, I'm done with this drunk shit. I'm done with being a bum. This kid right here, he's the one. Like, I'm dedicating myself to getting this kid to box, and I'm going to teach him, and we're going to be champion. He's going to be champion. That's that. So again, he just persistently pursuing Joe. And meanwhile, Joe, he's kind of acting like he's kind of like, at this point, he's kind of just chilling out in the town somewhat. Like, he's befriended he's befriended the little girl that he saved and her friends, and now they're kind of just hanging out together because he's still pretty young. He's like 15, 16, and they're younger than him, so he's kind of like leading them and being like their leader. Like, he's found these local kids who are like just troublemakers and just little rascals, and he's decided to make himself their leader. So they're just into like running around town, getting in all kind of mischief and whatnot. And but eventually, Dompe manages to convince Joe to start training as a boxer. But now, like I said, Joe's a Rolling Stone. He ain't really trying to do that. But the only reason he agrees is because Dompe promises him that he'll pay him 500 yen a day, give him somewhere to sleep, and some food to eat. And it's really crazy because normally if you're a fighter, you pay the trainer to train you, but it's the other way around. So even though Joe isn't really interested in becoming a boxer, he knows a sweet deal when he sees one, and he's homeless and hungry. So, why not just hang around in this town for a little while, hang out with these kids, and, pretend to be a boxer and just stack my money up. Just hitting the bag and running around for this old guy. For him, it's really just a means to make some money. He's not really taking it seriously at this point. So Dompe, of course, he was like basically like homeless himself when he first met Joe, like barely, just barely getting by. So he gets a job so that he can fund building a gym for Joe and paying him to train and all that. And he's thinking that while he's at work, that Joe is doing like the training routine that he's left him, like 3,000 jump ropes and run around town and hit the bag and push-ups, all that. But really, while Dompe is at work, Joe is running around town with the kids, just getting into trouble, scamming people, trying to make money, this and that. But while all this is going on, Joe manages to pull off a big scam, like a really big and very illegal scam. There's this woman named Yoko who comes to the slums every now and then, and she gives out like gifts to the kids and whatnot. And he sees this and he recognizes like, oh, I can flip this to my advantage. So he goes to her mansion and basically creates this big sob story about, I'm the guardian of these children, and they don't have parents, and they're sick, and they're homeless and whatnot. And Yoko, being the philanthropist that she is, she decides to hold a fundraiser for the children so that they can make money. I mean, this scam really just goes perfectly at first. I mean, Joe manages to raise like 1 million yen off of this scam. So really, it was a slam dunk. But the whole fundraiser thing ends up in the news. Dompe finds out about it, and not long after that, the police find out that it was a scam. And so it's, of course, now Joe is in big trouble. Everybody's found out that he basically committed fraud to raise money for a fake foundation. So Joe, he's hiding out at this abandoned building from the police officers, and Dompe takes it upon himself to try to apprehend Joe because he doesn't want Joe to get into any more trouble than he already is in. So he manages to knock Joe out. Like, Joe is a good fighter, but Dompe used to be a boxer when he was young, so he has like the actual technical know-how of how to fight. And it kind of surprises Joe a little bit. Like, Joe wasn't expecting it because, if I haven't pointed it out well enough, Joe is actually, he's a great fighter. I mean, there's one part before all this happens where he beats up like it had to be like 25 or 30, 40 Yakuza. I don't know how many it was. Like, he beat like 30 people by himself, and they had weapons and knives and shit. Like, he was fucked up after the fight, but he beat them all. He took down a whole Yakuza gang. Then extorted them. Hold up. Something's on my mic. Oh, shit. Hold on. Then extorted the motherfuckers. All right, so Dompe manages to apprehend Joe and turn him in to the police. I mean, he's distraught. He hates that he had to do it, but he doesn't want Joe to get in any more trouble, so he thinks it's best just to turn him into the police. Now, Joe, being the wild child that he is, I mean, he's beating up cops. I mean, Joe is really he's really kind of an asshole, and you're gonna see more of his asshole tendencies later. But he's really he really is somewhat of an animal. I mean, his whole life he's been free, just roaming Japan, doing whatever he wants to do. Now he's locked up, so he's very rebellious. So he's locked up, but still, even though Joe is locked up, Danpei is still trying to teach him how to box. He still hasn't given up on Joe. So he's now, since he can't see him face to face, he's been sending him letters. And the letters are basically showing him how to do different punches. Now, at first, Joe just rips the letter up. But he got so bored while in the holding cell that he decides to put it back together like a puzzle, and he reads it, and then it's basically Danpei teaching him how to throw a jab, which is like the most basic like boxing punch, the most fundamental basic boxing punch. And so Joe practices this punch while he's locked up, and he notices like, my punches have never sound this good. They've never had like this cut to him. Immediately he realized there's something to this whole boxing thing. He's not committed to it, but he realized like, okay, I'm gonna use this when I need it. Like this is a good punch. So several things happen throughout this time because he hasn't been sentenced yet. He's just in the holding cell. And while he's in the actual jail, when he goes there, the inmates there, they try to jump him and fight him or whatever. But Joe, being this like he ain't no bitch, it doesn't take long before he asserts his dominance within the holding cell. And while he's in there, he meets a guy named Nishi, and he's like the boss of the holding cell. And he ends up being like, really, he ends up becoming one of Joe's best friends later on. But we'll talk about that later. But of course, you know how jail works. You go to jail, you get sentenced by a judge, then you go to prison. And so that's basically what happened to Joe. He ended up going to the judge, and he was still acting rebellious, being arrogant, being cocky, being rude and disrespectful. So the judge had no sympathy for him and sentenced him to a year and 1 month in a juvenile prison. So from here, of course, Danpei, he's mad, and the kids are sad because during the short while that Joe was in town, like the people liked him, the kids loved him, and the townspeople loved him. So it was kind of sad when everybody found out that he was going to prison. But you know, you do the crime, you gotta do the time. So him and Nishi, they go to this prison. Now, Nishi, you know, he was the big boss in the holding cell, but he was scared to death when they had to go to the actual prison because apparently that prison is like really fucking dangerous. And he was just straight up bitch mode, crying, scared, and all that. And kind of like the same thing that happened with Joe in the holding cell, where at first he got jumped, and then he kind of turned the tables and beat everybody's ass. That's exactly what happened when he went to prison. Because again, Joe ain't no bitch. He's a great fighter. Really, he fits right in with these other inmates and degenerates because he's, when it comes to being a badass, he's definitely top dog. So it doesn't take long before he becomes somewhat of the alpha male within this prison. But while he's causing all this trouble and being rebellious within jail, he catches the attention of an inmate named Rikishi. Now, Rikishi was a former boxer. Rikishi was a boxer, but he ended up like hopping out of the ring and fighting one of the hecklers in the audience, and he started getting into street fights, and he ended up going to the juvenile prison. He's been there for a little while, and he's kind of on his best behavior because he's trying to get out pretty fast. But he sees Joe being rebellious and acting wild, and it just kind of catches his attention. Like he's like, all right, I need to go fuck with this guy. But yeah. Now, Joe, being the rebel that he is, the untamed wild dog, he is not trying to sit in prison for a year and a month. He immediately starts thinking of how he's going to escape from prison. So they come up with this dumbass plan. I mean, it really is a dumbass plan, but you know, where they're in the barn and they see all the pigs, and they're like, okay, we're going to make the pigs go wild and stampede. You're going to ride them as they burst through the gates. Sounds kind of familiar. Kamina. But yeah, so he enacts the plan, and at first it's going well. Like the pigs are just stampeding, and they're out of control, and everybody's getting out of the way, and everybody's scared, and they're stampeding through the gate. But Rikishi is standing by the gate, and again, Rikishi trying to get out soon, so he's kind of on his best behavior, so he's keeping everybody else in check. And so he sees Joe trying to escape on his pig, so he basically just he knocks out the pigs with his punches, and then he knocks out Joe as well. And of course, Joe ain't no bitch, so he's trying to square up with Rikishi, and he gets a few good punches in because he knows how to jab. But the rest of his punches are sloppy because he doesn't really know anything about professional fighting like Rikishi does. So Rikishi absolutely demolishes him in their little fight. And this moment changes everything. Like, this is the turning point for Joe. This is where everything goes left or right, depending on how you look at it. But because Joe, throughout his whole life, the one thing he's always had to be proud of was his fighting ability. Despite being homeless, despite wandering from place to place, not having a family, not having money or anything, he always prided himself on his powerful punch, his fighting, his natural fighting instinct. And never before has he ever been defeated so soundly by someone his own age and just so it's just outright embarrassed. I mean, he just got beat cleanly and quickly, and it really fucked him. He's never been defeated like that in his whole life. So now he can't get Rikishi out of his mind, and it gets so bad to the point where Joe actually manages to escape from the prison, but he still can't get Rikishi out of his mind. He keeps thinking about how he lost and why he lost and how could he win. And so he decides at that moment, I'm going to beat Rikishi. I don't care what it takes. I am going to defeat Rikishi. I'm going to mail Danpei. I'm going to agree to learning how to box, even if it's through letters. I'm going to learn more punches. I'm going to learn how to fight, and I'm going to beat Rikishi. And this is the moment where Joe begins to actually take boxing seriously, because now he's been defeated by a boxer. He realizes the strength and the power and the potential of professional fighting and knows he can't do it on his own. So he sends Danpei a letter asking for more instructions on how to fight. And Danpei, oh man, at this point he is just thrilled because he realizes that he finally managed to get through to Joe, that he finally managed to convince Joe to become a boxer. Well, really, it wasn't him. It was more Rikishi. But even then, he's thankful to Rikishi for being the catalyst that makes Joe decide to take boxing seriously. So Danpei is like, fuck these letters. I'm going to the prison. So him and the kids, they go to the prison to meet up with Joe. And of course, the person's not gonna let him in. Like, get your old ass out of here. But Yoko, the girl that Joe had scammed earlier on and got arrested and sent to prison for, she's actually sort of involved with the prison because, again, she's somewhat of an altruistic woman. She's always doing charity events and shit like that. And so now she's doing something nice for the prison. She's inviting an acting troupe to come to the prison to do a little show for the inmates to raise their morale. But she also has a relationship with Rikishi. Rikishi was the star boxer of her grandfather's boxing gym. And so there's a little bit of a connection there as well. So she notices Danpei and the children trying to get into the prison and trying to meet Joe. And she basically invites them to join the acting troupe so that they might be able to go inside and meet Joe. So during the whole performance of this acting troupe, there ends up being a confrontation between Joe and Rikishi because Joe disrespects Yoko while she's performing. And of course, Rikishi, he's not having that because he likes Yoko. They have they have history together or whatnot. So they go outside and they're about to fight. And then that's when Danpei and Yoko recommend, hey, instead of just having a little fight here, why don't we have a national, like instead of just having a little fucking a dumbass scuffle, let's have a real boxing match. Like let's do this like gentlemen. And so Yoko, she offers to buy boxing equipment for the prison so that the prisoners can have some type of recreation. Because of course she's from a rich family and they got connected. She can just do anything she wants at the snap of a finger. So the prison warden, he's more than happy to oblige because of who she is and what they might be able to do for the inmates and whatnot. So they buy a boxing ring, they get a gym, they get workout equipment, sandbags, gloves, headgear, all that shit. And it doesn't take long before the inmates to become obsessed with boxing, because now there's this big rivalry between Rikishi and Joe, and now they have something fun to do, and they got Danpei around to be like the sort of like coach and boxing trainer or whatnot. So now the whole prison is just all about boxing right now. I mean, in fact, I mean, there's even like a little small like boxing tournament arc within the prison for a couple episodes. But long story short, Rikishi and Joe, they're about to have their fight. And since Danpei is there, he's going to try to teach Joe a couple more moves, because if he does it, Rikishi's going to kill his ass. So Danpei decides to teach him a secret technique. And this technique ends up being Joe's essentially like his special move throughout the whole anime. Like this is his special technique, like his finishing blow, his super art, his Kamehameha. And it is the cross counter. Now the cross counter is a punch where right when your opponent is about to attack you, you attack them at the same time, but you're using their leverage against, like you're using their momentum against them. So even though you get hit, they get hit for basically like 2 or 3 times the actual damage, because you hit them as they're coming towards you full force. So you take damage, but they take twice as much. And really, it's a high risk, high reward type of attack that really suits Joe's like wild style of fighting to begin with. So really, it's the perfect technique for him. And so Danpei teaches him that, and Joe practices it on the other inmates until he finally has his fight with Rikishi. Now, when they finally have their fight, of course, Rikishi being a former pro, he beats the fuck out of Joe. I mean, he just whoops his ass. But the one thing Joe has up his sleeve is the cross counter, and he manages to pull it off right when he was about to just die. And he manages to hit Rikishi with the cross counter, and the fight ends up ending in a draw. But it's so awesome because that one punch was enough to basically like even the score of all the damage that Rikishi had did to him beforehand. So even though that, they both pass out, but it ends in a draw, which is still pretty amazing for Joe, who doesn't really have any professional experience. Once Rikishi wakes up, he even acknowledges like, you pretty much won that, yo. Like even though it was a draw, but you won because I shouldn't have got knocked out, period. But of course, you can't end the rivalry on a fucking draw. No one's gonna accept the draw. We need a decisive victor. Like we need a decisive victor, a winner, no draw. And so after that fight, there's a big like boxing tournament within the actual prison, and Joe and Rikishi, they plan to settle the score with that fight, but it never ends up happening because Rikishi gets released from prison early. He's been on his best behavior, so he gets out of prison early. But right before he leaves, he tells Joe, when I get out of prison, I'm gonna go back to being a pro boxer. Why don't you meet me out there and we can finish this in the pro ring instead of in his prison? And Joe pretty much agrees, and Rikishi is released. And then while Joe is still in prison, Danpei continues to train him. And then eventually, of course, he ends up serving his time and he gets out and he begins to walk the long, hard road of becoming a professional boxer. And really, that pretty much sums up the plot of Ashita No Joe. Well, at least how it begins. Like that whole part is pretty much the exposition of what encourages Joe to actually become a boxer and take it seriously. Once he gets out of prison, which is probably around like I say about episode 20 something, that's when he gets out of prison. From there is pretty much what you would expect. He becomes a professional boxer. He has to rise through the ranks so that he can one day face his old rival from prison, Rikishi. Oh yes, oh yes. But I'm not gonna spoil too much. I'm not gonna talk about the whole thing. It's really a lot more than that. That's really just the first like 25 episodes or so. Out of what I think it's like, Ashita No Joe is probably like 120 something episodes altogether, counting the first part and the second part. So yeah, it's like 100 more episodes after that. So and it gets pretty deep, but that's really how it starts off, and that's just what I wanted to talk about as far as like the plot. I think you get the point. So next I'm going to talk about the characters. Stay tuned. Whew, okay, now we're going to talk about the awesome characters of Ashita No Joe. Now, of course, first is Joe Yabuki, the main character, the wandering stray dog with a powerful punch. And really, now I've already seen Ashita No Joe a couple years ago, but I decided to watch it again. But when I started watching it, I started watching it at part 2 because it's separated into 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. And really, I just wanted to see part 2 because I didn't want to watch all the exposition in part 1 and shit. So I kind of went to part 2. But I said, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and do a review of this. So let me go back and watch part 1 and just refresh my memory about, you know, the early parts of it, the beginning, Joe meeting Danpei and going to prison and becoming professional and all that. And man, I forgot how much of an asshole Joe is. Like Joe is really early on in it. Joe is really a fucking dick, man. I mean, I love him as a character. He's one of my favorite anime characters. But early on, he really is almost unlikable. It's kind of, I mean, he's arrogant. He's combative and just really just wild and rude, and it's like it's only certain people that he really treats with some amount of respect and kindness. And really, that's like the local kids in the town that he befriends. Like that's when you really see him like being nice and more kind. But with a lot of other people, he's really just very cold. Like early on with Danpei trying to get him to box, even though he wasn't not like he was obligated to box or anything, but the way he kind of used Danpei's enthusiasm about him being a boxer against him. Like Danpei just wanted him to train and he was gonna pay him and feed him, and he didn't even do that. He just took the money and he just played around all day and got into trouble. And then how he treats Yoko, the lady that comes to the slums and gives out toys and presents and shit. He did a whole scam and fraud on her ass. And I mean, really just always getting into fights, and he beat up a whole police station. I mean, the dude is just really like psychotic. Early on, he's really just a monster. I hate to say it, but Joe was really a monster. Now, later on, he definitely becomes much more likable. Like after he gets out of prison and he discovers his passion for boxing, that's when he becomes a more likable character, because he kind of calms down a little bit. He's more civilized, but he still has that wildness as well. Like he still, like, just for example, when he got out of prison, Dompe's first objective was to get a boxing license, but he couldn't get it because he kind of had bad blood with the other officials from years ago. So he failed to get the license. So Joe, being the wild kid that he is, he thinks of his own way to get the fucking license. So what he does is he starts like picking on one of the rising stars in the boxing world and just knocks him out in front of all the reporters and shit. And then that boxer, he feels like, I gotta fight Joe to redeem myself. And that's how Dompe ends up getting his boxing license back. And that's just one of the few examples. That's just really an example of how Joe ends up converting that wild, reckless attitude into being beneficial to him when he becomes a pro. He uses it to sort of manipulate situations and get his way when obstacles come up. Sometimes it works out for the best, sometimes it doesn't. But still, past a certain point, he, like I said, he does become likable, but he always retains the, like some semblance of that wild child. And really, he's a battle hungry individual, man. Like, really reminds me of like kind of like Goku a little bit. Like, just the way Goku loves to fight, loves a strong challenger. That's really what Joe is all about. I mean, like I said earlier, he really takes pride in his fighting, his natural God-given fighting ability. And because of that, like, he's just always looking for the next challenge. And he's not afraid to fight outside of his weight class. He's not afraid to fight outside of what others would think his rank is. Cause he just really just don't give a fuck. Joe just does not care. He wants to fight strong opponents to prove something to himself. And that's really what the core of his character is. It's just really just, he has a true passion for fighting and combat, and he pursues it to the fullest through boxing. And outside of that, I think what helps him become more of a likable character is that you can tell that he really cares about the people around him. Well, post prison, like once he gets out of prison and he's more civilized and relatable and human, his relationships with the local people and Nishi and Dompe and the kids and Noriko, like, seeing those relationships and how he interacts with them, I think that sort of allows you, like those relationships help make Joe more of a likable person and more multifaceted. Like, it kind of gives you a view of him outside of the battle hungry, fight addicted boxing maniac that he really is. You know, despite being so hungry for battle and wanting to fight all the time, you know, at the end of the day, he likes, you know, he really does care about the people around him. And even, like, for example, when he got out of prison and all of the townspeople threw a party for him and the kids showed up and everybody was happy and shit, like, he cried that night because you could tell, like, he finally felt like he had a family. Like, that's something that he never, like, his whole life, he was always just wandering from place to place. He was always just doing his own thing, really led a very lonely life. And now he had pretty much a whole town behind him. And that night when they threw that party for him after he got out of prison, you could tell, like, it really touched him. Because he, you know, even though he's this wild fighting guy, he's still pretty much a kid. He's like 16 years old at that point. So, and he never had a real family. And I think that was his first experience with feeling like he had a real family. Like I said, that you can like him for either one of those reasons. The fact that he's just so dedicated to boxing and he's so strong and wild and just a maniac in the ring, but also because, you know, he's kind of, he really does care about his friends, and you can tell that he considers them to be his family. And like I said earlier, his special technique is the cross counter, the high risk, high reward technique. And his overall boxing style is like it's like it's a mix. Really, he kind of reminds me of Takamura from Hajime no Ippo, because on one hand he can fight in a more traditional way, like guard up, tight jabs, and all the usual boxing fundamentals, but he also has like that his own unique style to it. Like he can switch it up and like go no guard, like just no guard whatsoever, like just arms dangling, and let his opponent beat up on him, and then he'll just counter him. But I would say that his strengths in boxing or fighting is really a combination of his heart. Like he's got big heart. Like he takes some big ass whoopings in this show, man. But he always gets up for more. So he has a lot of tenacity, a lot of fight, a lot of heart. He doesn't go down easy, and he also has a very powerful punch. Like it gets to a point where like the other fighters in Japan don't even want to fight him because they're so afraid that he's going to injure them and end their career, and then he has to start fighting opponents from like different countries and shit. Like he levels up like that high. I mean, and he really just have like a naturally good punch. But overall, definitely a good character. But you kind of gotta wait for his character development, because at first he's really an asshole. Okay, then there's Coach Danpei, the ex-boxer turned drunken coach. He ends up being Joe's coach for the duration of the anime. Like I mentioned earlier, he used to be a boxer, but he got injured. He had like a bad eye injury, so he had to retire. But he was so obsessed with boxing that he just couldn't leave. And so he started coaching other boxers and teaching them how to fight. But he could never find somebody that he felt like could go all the way to the top, like that could become an actual champion, and not just like a Japanese champion, but a world champion. And that was his dream, to take a fighter and turn him into a world champion, but he could never find it. And he ran into all types of problems and roadblocks, and it ended up getting to the point where he lost his license, and he just started drinking. He just became pretty much a bum. When Joe first meets him, he's just drunk as hell, begging for money. It's not until when he sees Joe fight the local Yakuza that he realizes, like, oh, this is my guy. And that kind of brings him back to life. That reignites his passion for boxing when he meets Joe. I mean, Joe really gives him a second chance at life. And their relationship is really cool, because even though at first Joe is very resistant to becoming a boxer, once he realizes like boxing is what he wants to do, and that combined with how much Danpei wants him to become a champion, they become really close. Like Danpei really becomes somewhat of a father figure for Joe. I mean, man, Danpei is really a good one. I mean, he goes through so much shit for Joe. I mean, I can remember there was a part early on where I think after Joe had beat up the local Yakuza, they decided to come back with weapons. And Danpei was so scared that they were going to hurt him permanently that he threw him to the ground and covered his body up with his body and just let the Yakuza just beat his ass. So basically Danpei took a whole ass whooping for Joe just to keep his body safe. He's like, I got to protect the body of my fighter. He's going to be my fighter. I don't care what you do to me. And just like when Joe went to prison, even then Danpei was writing him letters trying to teach him how to box. He visited him in prison. He helped organize the whole boxing program in the prison. He coached the other inmates and Joe. I mean, he did so much for Joe. And then of course once he went pro and he became his official coach and built the whole gym for him. I mean, it was a little rinky-dink gym by the river, but still, like, he made a ring and a bag and some gloves. Like, and still worked a day job just to fund it. I mean, Don Pay is a good one, but I gotta say, he's very caring and persistent. But at the same time, what I always disliked about him was that he's just pessimistic, man. Like, to me, he's too pessimistic. If I was a boxer, I need a motherfucker like Emmanuel Stewart, bro. I need a motherfucker like that. I don't know if you guys ever heard of him, but he's like a boxing coach legend, like in real life. And man, when you hear some of the shit that he would say to his boxers, like when they were in trouble, he'd be like, "Get your motherfucking ass up! You need to fight! You need to throw punches, bitch!" Like, he would really cuss them out, like, but still, like, he was doing it in such a way. It was like, I gotta perform. But with, I guess it's just like Don Pay tried so hard to get Joe to become a professional boxer. Then it's like, by the time it happened, it's so many instances where Don Pay is pessimistic about Joe's chances of winning. And I think that's what always bothered me. He tried so hard to get this kid to box. Now that he finally boxed, and you scared because he want to take a risk, or you scared because it ain't looking good. Like, that's what always bothered me about him. Great character. He has a great relationship with Joe. And really, I would consider him a boxing genius. I mean, one of the coolest things he did was early on when Joe was still in prison. Don Pay was trying to teach him a lesson. So what he did was he took the weakest inmate out of the prison and decided to train him instead of Joe. And Joe started getting jealous because up until that point, Don Pay gave him all his attention. But now he started giving all his attention to little little pipsqueak Aoyama and teaching him how to fight. And in a short time, he turned like the weakest guy in the prison to one of the main threats during the boxing tournament. Like, he was basically third behind Rikishi and Joe, and actually gave Joe a pretty good fight. But Don Pay specifically trained him to expose Joe's own weaknesses. And seeing that kind of lets you know that Don Pay really is somewhat of a boxing genius. Like, he really knows what the fuck he's doing. It's just that, I guess, during a lot of crunch times, when Joe was actually a professional, it doesn't seem like Don Pay has the answer. It's like, it seems like a lot of times Joe just kind of has to grit his teeth and just take an ass whooping before finally just pulling off a cross counter or just thugging it out, man. But overall, Don Pay, man, great character. Then there are the children. Hold on, let me get a little sip of water. Ooh. Ooh. Okay. Then there are the children. Now, I say the children because I can't remember all their names. But it's like this group of 5 kids who are just always following Joe around. They're the kids that he first meets when he first comes to the town, and he befriends them and becomes their leader. And so they instantly just vibe and form like a bond with each other. But certainly the standout out of these kids is Sachi, and she's just really just like a spunky little girl. She's got a hot temper. She's always taking her sandals off and trying to hit people with them. But yeah, I mean, this group of kids, they're like the adorable little rascals of the slums, just always getting in trouble. They love Joe to death, like he's the big brother or uncle or something. And but I feel like their role in this show is like on one hand they're like the comedic relief of the anime. Like, they make things more lighthearted. They're always doing like little funny shit, little pranks, and like pretending like they're boxers or sumo wrestlers. Just always being nosy and trying to figure out what Joe's up to or what's wrong with Joe, because he's always going through some type of psychological problem or whatnot. But outside of being like comedic relief, I think that they also act as a way to show Joe's softer side. Cause Joe, he's always so focused on boxing and getting stronger, and whoever his rival is at that given time, you don't really get to see like other parts of his personality a lot. But with the kids, you get to see him just be more normal. You get to see him be more caring and just kind of playing around. They might go fishing. They might go play pachinko together. Just hanging out with the kids or whatnot. And like I said, it just allows you to see Joe just be more normal and just kind of relaxed and just having fun and show his con side and just like there was one instance where the kids, they ended up getting into trouble. They were spying on one of Joe's upcoming opponents. And now this guy, he fucked up because he actually, in return for those kids spying on him, he hurt them. Like he actually like beat them up a little bit and then brought them back to where Joe was at. And that made Joe so fucking mad. Oh man, like, oh God, the look on his face before that fight. But again, like moments like that just show you how much Joe does care about the people around him, even the little brats from the village. Like, you fucking them kids, I'm killing your ass. Like it got that serious, man. But also I feel like the kids they represent how, like, I feel like they're like the representatives of the entire town, because really the whole town loves Joe. Once he gets out of prison, they throw a whole party for him. When he goes pro, he becomes an instant star, a local celebrity. But Joe can't befriend everybody in the town. So I feel like with the kids, they sort of represent they're like the representatives of the town. Like they represent what the whole town feels about Joe. Like just that love for this young man. And again, I think, they don't box. They don't really bring anything to the table. But I feel like they're very important to the overall, to what makes this anime really great overall, because they allow you to see a different side of Joe. And they bring a lot of funny hijinks to what is otherwise a very serious, even dark anime. Whew. Okay. Now, next is Nishi, the mammoth, boss of the holding cell and Joe's best friend. Like I mentioned earlier, Joe first met him when he went to the holding cell after he got locked up. And Nishi was like the boss of the holding cell. But of course, Joe ended up beating up his lackeys and beating Nishi's ass. Ooh, excuse me. And when Nishi ended up going to prison with Joe, Nishi just flipped. I mean, you thought he was bad and tough. I mean, he's this big, fat dude, and you're thinking he'll fit right in, but he's actually somewhat of a coward. He's really a big teddy bear deep down. But while him and Joe are in prison together, they pretty much become friends, because Nishi respects Joe's tenacity, his power, his confidence, because Nishi's never really been confident in himself. So he kind of becomes Joe's like lackey for a while they're in prison together, and they kind of develop like a real friendship. Even though he's a coward, I mean, he really is kind of a coward. He's really like gentle and just all around like he's really a earnest good guy. That's how he's really a good guy. Like, despite his size, he's really like I said, he's a big teddy bear, totally friendly and whatnot. And once he gets out of prison, he decides to become a boxer alongside Joe, because they became friends and in prison. They both participated in the boxing program. So I guess he felt like he didn't really have anything else to do. So he was like, well, fuck it. I'll join your little rinky dink gym with Danpei, and, he'll train both of us. So really, throughout Ashita No Joe, Joe and Nishi are pretty much the only two students of Danpei. Danpei coaches both of them. I believe Nishi, he fights as a middleweight or a heavyweight, and Joe, he's a bantamweight throughout the course of the anime. But again, like him and Nishi, they do end up become like, really, I would say Nishi is his pretty much his best friend because they spend so much time together. They live together, they train together, and he really acts as sort of a really good sparring partner for Joe when he's not having fights of his own. Because even though Joe is a better fighter than him, because of Nishi's size, he's pretty much twice the size of Joe. That kind of balances things out. So he acts as a good sparring partner for Joe, as well as just being a really a good friend that Joe can depend on. He's not as good at boxing as Joe. He's more like mediocre. He reminds me of Aoki and Kimura from Hajime no Ippo. Like they're like the two joke boxers alongside Ippo and Takemura, who are just like beast mode. That's really kind of what Nishi is to Joe. He's like the mediocre boxer that's struggling, while Joe is like a rising star, just knocking motherfuckers out. So yeah, I like him as a character. He's good. He's just Joe's best friend. The gentle giant Nishi. Okay. Next is Yoriko. She is the daughter of the grocery store owners. Now, when Joe and Nishi get out of prison, they get day jobs alongside being boxers. Of course, Nishi takes it more seriously than Joe. Joe's always like skipping out on work and whatnot, but they get jobs at a grocery store, and the daughter of the owner, of the grocery store is named Yoriko. She ends up becoming one of Joe's love interests early on in the anime. Oh man, oh god, it don't quite work out. But but yeah, but I hate to say it, but I mean, she's okay. I feel like she's kind of in that category of what the children are. Just sort of a way for you to see a different side of Joe. They have a few, I don't even want to call it intimate. Like they have a few intimate moments, but I don't mean like it's really one sided. Like how anime typically is, where the guy, he's kind of dense and aloof and just focused on his goals, while the girl is obviously in love with him. That's really the relationship between Yoriko and Joe. Like, she's obviously in love with him, but he's so focused on boxing that he can't really tell, and that just frustrates her to no end. I mean, but she's a caring, sweet girl, really innocent, cute. But Joe, he's just so obsessed with boxing that he doesn't really have the time for her. But she makes for some cute moments throughout. But I hate to say it, she really is kind of like the obligatory love interest that's just sort of inserted into the anime. Doesn't really have a lot of value as far as I mean, again, like, I'd rather she be there than not. I think she's a decent character. But you know how anime typically tends to be. It's like sometimes it's like they just add love interest just for the sake of having them, without them actually being of real value to the overall story. I mean, when I think of her, I think of girls would never understand this anime. I mean, it's I don't know if I want to talk about that part, but it's just throughout the anime, she loves Joe. She likes him, but she just can't understand him. She can't understand why he's so obsessed with boxing and getting hurt. And you can't eat what you want to eat. You train all day. You're perfectly fit. You're getting hurt and all that. And she just doesn't understand. She likes him, but she doesn't understand him. But yeah, that's Yoriko. Then there's Yoko, the princess of the Shiraki family and owner of the Shiraki Gym. Now, of course, I mentioned Yoko earlier. She was the girl that was donating presents to the kids in the slums. Joe saw her as a mark and then just, scammed her and committed fraud against her, got locked up and whatnot. That's how they met. Now, she's, of course, beautiful. She's very graceful. She comes from a wealthy family. And for whatever reason, she's just really into being altruistic. She's very giving, always trying to donate to some type of charity or do something for somebody. Of course, like I said early on, she was donating presents to the children. When Joe got locked up, she made it so that she arranged for an acting troupe to show up and entertain the inmates. She bought all the boxing equipment for them to start a boxing program within the prison. And just always pretty much using her money to do things, to do nice things. But like I said, she becomes the owner of the Shiraki Gym. And that is the gym that Rikishi trains in. So they have like a close relationship. I feel like Rikishi kind of has a crush on her. Like he likes her. And I think it might be mutual. But I'm not exactly sure because things happen. Yeah. But now she's kind of interesting because I didn't notice this the first time I watched it, but I notice it now, and it's like her and Joe are always button heads. They never get along. Her and Joe never see eye to eye. They never get along. They never hold on. Whew. Her and Joe never get along. They never see. They always just buddy. Like Joe does not like her. To say like Joe cannot stand this bitch for real. And it all started when Joe first saw her giving presents to the kids in the slums. In his mind, he felt like she was being fake. He felt like this is just some spoiled rich kid who's just come to the slums, giving shit away that's of no loss to her just so she can feel better about herself or to feel superior to us. And that's how he perceived it. Now, whether or not that was true, I can't say, but I feel like that's the core of why they never have really a good relationship throughout the entirety of this anime. Because she is actually a pretty important character. And you can also say that she's kind of like Joe's love interest, but I would say she's better than Yoriko because she actually has more of a role, like a more important role throughout. Hold on. Sound here is kind of acting up. But yeah, she does have more of an important role than Yoriko because she owns a whole gym and she arranges it so that at a certain point, like she's like a key factor in actually like arranging fights for Joe and opening up doors and opportunities for him. But he like I said, they never get along because he always interprets the things that she does as being manipulative. And I didn't catch it the first time, but watching it, like rewatching this shit, I realized like, yo, she really is like Joe was right. Like just Yoko is kind of fucking manipulative, yo. Like she uses her status and her position to manipulate things the way that she wants them to go. And I finally realized that Joe actually is kind of justified in feeling some like some amount of negativity towards her because she is kind of manipulative. Like just for example, when Joe was locked up in prison and she came there with the acting troupe and Joe almost got into a fight with Rikishi, she suggested that, okay, I'll pay for the boxing equipment. We'll start a boxing program here. Now, everybody else perceived that as being, oh, she's just being nice again. She's using her money to, give something back to the prisoners, and they can have like a fucking outlet for their aggression. They can box each other and have fun and compete and all that. But Joe realized, like, the only reason you doing this because you want to see Rikishi whoop my ass. That's the only reason you doing all this shit. You want to see your guy, your little pet Rikishi, your boxer, beat my ass because I've been rude and crude and cruel and beating people up and I scammed you and I humiliated you and I choked you literally. Like, I did all this shit, and now you want Rikishi to prove his strength against me. That's why you're doing it. And she would never admit to it, but he had a point. And it's little moments throughout the whole anime where, because Yoko is in a position of power as far as like owning a whole gym and having money and having connections, she's able to manipulate things when she wants it to go a certain way. Like, again, when Joe was about to have like his biggest fight, before he could fight him, she arranged for him to have a tune-up fight because she felt like he wasn't ready. And from her perspective, she was doing it out of love for Joe, out of caring about him, wanting him to be at his best. But he just saw it as, you're being manipulative again. You're using your power to basically like use us as like chess pieces, like just moving us around so things can go the way you think they should go. And you're not a man. You don't know what it's like to be a boxer. You don't know what his life is like. You're on the outside looking in, and you're just barely involved because you just happen to be the owner of the gym that Rikishi boxed at. Like, and I think that's really the source of why they really always butt heads throughout the anime. But overall, I like Yoko as a character because she has depth to her. So, and that's really the same reason why Joe doesn't like her, is why I like her as a character, because she helps make things interesting. She's not just a pretty face floating around, just another love interest. Like, she actually, like, she's invested in Joe's career as a boxer and is always trying to make moves that she feels like is gonna benefit him, even though he doesn't appreciate it. She's always trying to make the type of moves and decisions that she feel like would benefit him and would take him to the next level in boxing. And she does so in a manipulative way. She won't admit it. She does it all under the guise of philanthropy and altruism, but she's a manipulative ass woman. She really is yo. And I didn't realize that until I rewatched it, but I like that though, because like I said, it at least gives her some depth, besides just being a fucking pretty face, another weak woman that doesn't have any control in this anime. Like, she does have some amount of power, and I kind of like that about her. Okay, now next is Rikishi Toru. Now, he is the pride of the Shiraki boxing gym. Now, this dude, he's cool, he's tall, he's handsome, but he's also like, he's powerful. Like, he ain't somebody to fuck with. Like, he used to be a professional before he went to prison and met Joe. And so, of course, when he meets Joe in prison, he's just more than ready to whip his ass and put him in his place and whatnot. But I like him because he has like this aura of maturity, but also like wisdom. Like, not only does he become like Joe's primary rival, I feel like he's also somewhat of a big brother to Joe, because just him being more mature and wise and even stronger, because he used to be a professional boxer. And while they're locked up together, he's pretty much the inmate that the guards and the other inmates depend on to kind of keep Joe in his place. Like, he's the only one that's really able to set Joe straight or go toe to toe with him in a fight. and Joe can't stand that because nobody's ever been able to tame him or stop him or control him, but Rikishi can. Rikishi is just that strong. He's so much stronger than him and so much more experience in fighting than him that he's able to sort of just shut Joe down whenever he's being a brat. And man, really, Rikishi's just all around just a cool ass character. Definitely one of the coolest characters in this anime. I mean, really the definition of cool, man. Just way too cool. And of course, he's a great fighter. And once he gets out of prison, he begins boxing again, quickly rises through the ranks, and it pretty much is waiting for Joe to catch up to him so that they can finally finish the score, settle who's the best fighter once and for all. But yeah, I mean, there's not much more to say about Rikishi. He's pretty much just the coolest, pretty much the coolest like boxing character. Really one of the coolest boxing characters I've ever seen, man. I mean, because he just really carries himself like a professional. Once he gets out of prison, just the way he carries himself. He's boxing at this fancy ass Shiraki gym, and all the while that he's rising through the ranks, he's paying attention to Joe's progress, making sure like, yeah, I'm gonna fight, I'm gonna knock his ass. Still waiting to knock his ass out. So yeah, I love Rikishi, man. It's a cool character. Okay. Next is Carlos Rivera, the beltless champion. Okay. Now Carlos, he doesn't appear until Ashita No Joe Part 2. Some things happen with Joe, and he loses his passion for boxing. He doesn't want to do it anymore. And even when he tries to get back into boxing, he's going through this psychological problem where his body won't allow him to hit his opponent in the head, because he's gotten so strong that now he can kill somebody by pretty much just punching them. So now he ended up actually killing someone in the ring, and it fucked him up psychologically to where his body won't allow him to hit people in the head anymore. And that's like a whole thing he has to go through. And it makes him just lose his confidence in himself, and because you can't be a boxer, you can't hit people in the head. But when he meets Carlos manages to pretty much revitalize Joe's passion for boxing. And here's what I think. Here's what my theory is. I feel like when Joe was going through that whole period where he couldn't hit people in the head because he was afraid he was going to kill them, I think that the problem was that he was fighting too many weaker opponents. Like he got back into boxing, but they were all just so far below his level. I think that his body was just, he couldn't bring his body to go all the way in those fights. But when he met Carlos was somebody that was on his level. Really one of the few fighters around that was on his level at this point. And they had like a quick sparring match. And quickly Joe realized like, yo, this guy's actually a challenge for me. Like, and that's when he finally manages to overcome that mental quagmire that had been haunting him for like this long while. And he begins to be able to hit his opponents in the head again, all because he meets Carlos, you know. And I think really that's what he needed after he killed after he killed one of his opponents. He needed to fight someone that was on his level to where he didn't care about whether he killed you or not. I mean, just let's be real. I think when he met Carlos, it made him feel like, I don't care if I kill you, I don't care if I hurt you, I just want to beat you. Carlos made him feel the same way that Rikishi had made him feel earlier in the anime, and that's really what Joe needed at this point, and that's what Carlos' character really is. He's like, I hate to say it, but he's kind of like Rikishi Part 2. He's like the fighter that just reignites the flame within Joe Yabuki once he kind of loses that spark. But really, I like him as a character because he's really like, he's just joyful. He's a free spirit, like just always laughing and smiling and having fun. But he also has that wildness like Joe. Like he has that love for battle and that pride about his own masculinity and macho-ness and fighting ability. And he has a similar background to Joe. Like he's from like the slums of Venezuela. He's a Venezuelan boxer, and kind of like Joe, he grew up in poverty, didn't have a good family, didn't have money and stuff like that. So he's from, pretty much started from the bottom. Now we here type of situation. But again, much like Joe, he just by the time you meet him, it's like he has a boxing coach who's kind of got him under control. But once Carlos meets Joe, it's over. Like it's over. Like they just bring out the worst in each other because they're really competitive, but they're also just these two free spirits who just kind of do what they want to do. And really with Carlos, it got so bad to where he wanted to fight Joe so bad that even though he had a fight lined up, like the biggest, like really a fight to fight the champion, like to finally get the belt that he always wanted, he said, fuck that, I want to fight Joe. And his coach was like trying to get him to stop, like, no, you can't fight Joe. And Carlos just knocked his ass out, like, no, I'm doing what I want to do. Like Joe really brought out like the wild animal in Carlos. But again, Carlos, man, he's really a great character. But he's also somewhat of a cheater. Like he's someone who would do anything to win. Like he use elbows and like he really don't care. Like he'll really fuck you up. And his specialty is like this lightning speed punch where he punches so fast you can't even see it. Like that's his special. Like Joe has the cross counter, Rikishi has the uppercut, which is like the counter to the cross counter, but Carlos has that lightning speed punch where you can't even see the shit. It just getting hit and you don't know what's going on. So he's really fast. That's kind of his gimmick. But yeah, all around great character. Carlos Rivera. All right, last but not least is Jose Mendoza. Let me get a sip of water for this one. Woo. Now, Jose is pretty much the final boss of Ashita No Joe. He's the final opponent that Joe will have to face before he can enter Valhalla. But no, yeah, Jose Mendoza is pretty much like a perfect, invincible champion. He's undefeated. He's never been even knocked down. He trains hard, even for the fights that should be easy. He doesn't take any shortcuts or nothing. I mean, and I really you just gotta appreciate how they build this guy up. I mean, because anytime you're talking about, this is the ultimate goal. This is the This is the bantamweight world champion. Not the Japanese champion, not the Asian Pacific champion, but the world champion. This is the guy to beat, the strongest of the strong. They did a really great job of building him up and really establishing his dominance as a character. He's obviously strong, but he's also like proud and calm and composed, and he really carries himself like a king. Like that's the whole vibe I got from him. Like I'm a king in this bitch. But unlike Joe, who doesn't really have like strong attachments outside of like the kids in the village and Dompe or whatnot, like Jose is actually like a family man. He's one of the few rivals of Joe who actually has like a normal life. Like he got a wife and kids and they love him. I mean, really, Jose is like the perfect man. He's invincible in the ring, and outside the ring, he's a stand-up guy, all-around gentleman who spends time with his kids and trains hard and goes on vacation. I mean, really just the perfect family man. He's a hobbyist. He goes horseback riding, and I want to fucking marry him. I mean, this dude, he's just fucking perfect. But there's a dark side to him. Obviously, you know, to make it this far, you gotta have like a certain darkness to you. And there's even a flashback where they show Jose when he's younger, because at this point he's like 30, so still in his prime, but on the older end of things. But they show a flashback where he's like Joe's age, and you see him just demolishing his opponent, and he even gave his opponent like nightmares that he could never forget and shit like that. So he kind of has like, I wouldn't say a dark past, but he started out from the bottom too, where he was just fighting in like Mexican clubs, knocking motherfuckers out, giving them nightmares and shit. But by the time that Joe meets him, he's just the perfect champion, strong as hell. And like I said, they do a really good job of building him up as like the guy to beat, the most powerful champion. Like he does like all these different flexes, man. Like when he first meets Joe wanted to knock him out. Like, I don't care. Like like they just happened to be at a party, and Joe sees him like, yo, I'm gonna knock this dude out just because. But when Jose came up to him, it's like Joe felt his power level, like, oh shit, like instantly he ain't want nothing to do with him. And he thought that Jose was gonna like insult him or something, but Jose, being the gentleman that he is, he puts his hands on Joe's shoulders and just says good luck and walks away. So it just seems like a friendly gesture. So Joe goes home and he takes his shirt off and he looks at his shoulders, and he's got these handprints on his shoulders. Like, he didn't realize it at the time, but Jose like touched him so hard that he left handprints on his fucking body, like deep red handprints. So that was like the first flex. Like, I'm gonna fuck you up if I see you in the ring type shit. But then again, he met him in America in a casino, and he saw Jose just chilling by himself, and he was just playing with some coins. They had a little short conversation, and then Jose like flicked a coin towards Joe. So Joe, he ain't think nothing of it. He looked at the coin, he realized this motherfucker bent a coin with his fingers. Like, really, like think of a quarter and somebody literally bending it in half with their fingertips. Like, that's how strong this dude is. Like, he is really like just flexing left and right. And he ends up giving one of Joe's rivals like permanent brain damage. Like, he ends up fighting him after Joe fights him, and they show the X-ray of this guy's skull, and he literally like put a hole in his skull with a punch. And that caused like severe brain damage, where the dude was just straight up like gone, bro. Like, just full blown retarded, dog. I hate to say it, but he fucked that dude up. And he had another fight where later on the guy went into a coma and died. So it's like, you fight Jose, like, you probably gonna fucking die, or you either gonna die or you're gonna have severe brain damage. Like, you don't leave a fight with him okay. Like, that's how bad he is. But his specialty is the corkscrew punch, which is like a punch, like just an extra little spin to it that just increases the damage. You know, pretty simple, kind of like Dudley from Third Strike or Street Fighter 3 corkscrew punch. Nice and flashy punch. But again, like, you really couldn't ask for a better final rival for Joe. I mean, they do such a good job of building him up and giving him this air of invincibility and dominance. And that last fight between him and Joe is just phenomenal. I mean, really a legendary moment in anime history. Oh man. But Jose Mendoza, great champion. Okay. Now, those were the major characters. There are more, but those are the ones I feel like were most important. Next, I'm going to talk about the good and the bad. Stay tuned. Okay, now, the good. Now, first, this anime is full of manly tears. Just so many moments of manly tears. Now, what's manly tears? Oftentimes you hear people say like, man, that moment made me shed a manly tear. It's like a manly tear is when a man cries, but it's not like a pathetic, whimpering, sad cry. It's a cry of like, it's a cry of, it's like a cry of honor. It's like a cry where you experience a moment or see a moment, it just resonates with your manhood. And it's a lot of moments in Ashita No Joe that just almost brings a tear to your eye. Just almost that one manly tear. I mean, and really, man, like these guys cry so much in this damn anime. You would think it was a damn soap opera, but every moment where they cry, it makes sense. Like again, it's not like a bitch ass I'm sad or I'm in love crying. It's just like they go through like they really just have like a real manly moment, like really just a moment where they sort of just resonate with each other on this special level that only they can experience. Like they're going through a special kind of hell together. You know, like I love you, but I gotta hurt you. I gotta abuse you, or just weird moments like that. Like just for example, while Joe is locked up in prison, Danpei is there, and because they start the whole boxing program or whatnot, and he ends up coaching Aoyama, who is like the weakest guy out of everybody in the whole prison, and that makes Joe jealous. Like Joe can't understand, like, why did he stop training me and start training this little pipsqueak Aoyama? And of course, it turned out that he only did that because he wanted to expose Joe's weakness. He didn't want to just tell him his weakness. He wanted to hurt him in the worst possible way. I'm gonna take the weakest guy in the prison that you underestimated, that you didn't expect to be able to rival your strength and your pride, and I'm gonna have him hurt you. I'm gonna train him to hurt you in the specific ways that you need to be hurt. And the plan just works flawlessly. Aoyama exposes Joe's weaknesses, and Joe realizes where he went wrong. He realizes the depth of boxing, the horror of boxing. Really, the whole lesson was to get Joe to learn how to defend, how to use footwork, how to block, how to sway, and all that, instead of just attacking and focusing on offense. And after the fact that he did all this, Danpei just breaks down crying because he knows, like, Joe, I hurt you so bad. I made you feel alone. I abandoned you, but I did it so you could get stronger. And Aoyama, I used you just so I could teach Joe a lesson. And again, Danpei was just crying. He was so sad. He felt bad about how he pretty much had manipulated these two, but they both understood, because from there, that made Joe develop more of a respect of the depth and fundamentals of boxing. And Aoyama, who was being bullied in prison, that allowed him to kind of grow and stand up for himself. So it all worked out for the good. But just moments like that, man, because I swear, especially like with Aoyama, like seeing him go from being like the bullied inmate to actually like rising to being a respectable boxer. I mean, it was a couple times, man, where I had to kind of hold back like a tear or two, because I could relate to that, having been bullied myself. Like, I could relate to his character somewhat. So that's what I mean by just moments of this manly tears. And also, just another example, there's a part when Joe and Nishi, they're out of prison, and now they're professional boxers, and Joe is doing good. He won his first 3 fights, but Nishi lost his first 3 fights. Like, he's just doing bad. He's strong. He got the talent, but mentally he's not able to push himself to an actual victory. And so what they do is they know that he has a crush on Noriko. So they try to convince him that Noriko is in the crowd cheering for him, and they feel like if he feels like Noriko likes him, they'll encourage him to fight harder in the fight. And at first it works, but then he gets knocked down again. But then he looks over at Joe, and Joe is crying. And he realizes that Joe is crying because Nishi told him, if I lose this 4th fight, I'm quitting. I'm leaving the gym. And by this point, Nishi and Joe are like best friends. And Joe doesn't want Nishi to leave him. He doesn't want Nishi, he doesn't want to be the only guy boxing in the gym. And so he realized, like, oh, Nishi's about to lose again. He's going to leave. And when Nishi sees him crying, he realizes, like, Joe is crying for me. He's crying because he sees me as a friend and he doesn't want to lose me. And that gives Nishi the strength to rise to his feet and win the match and get his first victory. And that allows him to break through that mental barrier that kept him from winning fights that he should have won in the first place. Again, just another moment where like that deep masculine bond that they had with each other just allowed them to push each other further. Again, I'm going to abuse you, but I love you because you're my brother type shit. And really, again, like, just one more example, one of my favorite moments in the anime, Noriko and Joe, they kind of go on, like, I guess you could call it like a date, like a kind of a, you know how that goes. She's taking him out to like the club and stuff, and he's not feeling it. He's just thinking about boxing. He's like, what the fuck? But Noriko is trying to get into his head, try to figure out like why do you love boxing so much? You can't eat what you want to eat. You training all the time. You always get hurt. I'm worried about you. Explain to me what it is about boxing that just has you so hooked. And Joe explained it in such a way that even I can relate to at this point. Not to the extent that Joe can, of course. He's on a totally different masculine wavelength than a bitch like me. But when he explained it, I totally understood what he meant. But he basically explained it like when he's in the ring, it's like he's on fire. It's like sparks are everywhere. And really just explaining how the thrill of the fight just invigorates him so much. And how after the fight, there's nothing left but white ash. Like the fight itself is so hot. It's so blazing hot. It's like an inferno. It's the hottest fire you can imagine. And then it's over. And there's nothing left but ashes. And really just in so many words, just explaining a very simple concept. Just the thrill of battle, the thrill of a challenge. That thing that like, it's something about guys where we just want to push things to the next level. Like, we just want to challenge ourselves just for the sake of it. Like, I want to fight you just to prove something. Or I just want to run like this marathon just to prove something. I just want to lift these heavy weights, like, just to prove something to myself. And throughout those little challenges, we just enjoy shit like that. But Joe definitely takes it to an extreme. It's because boxing is fucking hell on earth, of course. So, but when he explained that, it just I really understood what he was talking about. But it was funny because Noriko said, I'll never understand. I'll never understand you, Joe. And that's kind of when their relationship kind of fell apart a little bit. Like, I think that's when she realized, like, I'm never going to get through to him because he's totally somewhere else. But that moment, I felt like it explained, it it makes me think of that moment in Berserk where Griffith is at the party and he's talking to the princess, and he's kind of explaining to her like there are certain things that are beyond friendship and beyond love that are worth pursuing. And I think that's kind of what Joe was basically. It's kind of like that same sort of conversation where a man is trying to explain to a woman like what drives him, outside of sex and the cheap carnal pleasures of the flesh. What is it that moves a man to put himself in danger, to push when he doesn't really need to, or to just take risks and shit like that? And that, like I said, that moment is kind of goes in line with what I've been talking about this whole time. It's just Ashita No Joe is just the epitome of just sort of masculine principles, and that's why I really appreciate. That's one of the things I really appreciate about it overall. Okay, a sip. Now, next, Kino art style and art direction. I know the word Kino just gets thrown around loosely nowadays, but Ashita No Joe really is fucking Kino. Like, well, at least part 2. Now, I'll be real with you. Ashita No Joe is fucking old. It's old ass anime, so excuse me. The animation and the graphics and the visuals in the first part, they're okay, but they're not that great. I mean, if you're a zoomer, I don't know how much you're gonna be able to get into anime this old with its dated look and animation, but definitely with part 2, when like with Ashita No Joe part 2, that's when everything gets a touch up. The animation is better, the colors are better, the music is better, the character design, like they even improved the character design. Like, I mean, everything is better in part 2, and that's really what I'm talking about with this. Like as far as like the art direction, it improves so much in part 2. I mean, it's really just phenomenal. I mean, just the way that they stimulate different moods using the scenery. Like, you got these lonely, chilly mornings where Joe is just barely getting out of bed to train. Like, just really displaying the monotony of the daily training of a boxer. Like, I'm just gonna get up, just dragging myself up. It's early in the morning. I'm gonna stretch. No one's around, and just start running. And then you got like the bright sunny days where Joe is just hanging out with the kids by the lake, and they're just playing around and having fun together. And then you got these busy nights illuminated by the neon lights. I mean, just their use of different like weathers and scenery and God, man, like just you see the fucking stars at night just reflected off the river and shit. Like, it just overall, man, like just the art direction in part 2. I gotta emphasize part 2 is really where this shit gets strong at, but the art direction in part 2 is really good, man. Just the way they set up certain scenes, the angles and the colors, and man, it's like they just, man, the way they just express these different moods, man, it's perfect. Like, they use everything from the rain and the snow, and sort of like you might see Joe and he's just in a crowd of people, but they're all just kind of like faceless and just going by, and he's just kind of alone, contemplating his next move or his life or whatnot. Just everything, just, man, it is really good. I mean, Ashita No Joe Part 2 is pure anime Kino. Like I said, the character designs are improved as well. The sceneries got everything from slums to the red light district. They go from Japan to Hawaii and America. You just get all these different visuals, man. It's beautiful. And then they have like these pastel paintings used for like certain scenes that are just sort of emphasized for their importance. I mean, man, again, And I gotta say, part two, part one is okay, but part two, man, the art direction is really special. I mean, I'm telling you, it's really something special about the fucking art in part two, man. Okay, next, Joe's character development, and man, like I said, I haven't seen this in a couple years, so I forgot how much of an asshole Joe really was, man. I mean, he was choking bitches, he fighting cops and scamming people, and oh man, just rude and just starting trouble for no good reason. I mean, the dude was really a troublemaker all around, but when you look at what he becomes, like, I mean, and granted, he always retains some semblance of that wildness, but you definitely see him like chill out. you really get this, like, over the course of the anime, you see him kind of mellow out more and more and more, where he just, and not like, and really he never loses that edge that allowed him to be a great fighter. It's just that he becomes so focused on fighting that he ain't got time for the bullshit. It's just, everything is just training. Or I'm if I'm relaxing and I'm just hanging out with the local kids or whatnot, playing pachinko or whatever. But he really stops getting into trouble. Whoa. Okay, I'm back. I had to take a quick commercial break there. But back to what I was talking about. Joe, over the course of the series, really does have outstanding character development. I mean, he seriously goes from being someone that even I had a hard time liking to being one of my favorite anime characters. But that's just because I just feel like a lot of times characters in anime tend to be kind of like, they are who they are throughout the entirety of the series. They don't really change much. They might become better as a fighter or whatever they're doing or whatever their expertise might be, but who they are as a person doesn't really change much. But with Joe, you really do get to see him mature and become an adult, a young man, I should say. And really, one of my favorite moments out of this whole anime, this is during Ashita No Joe Ashita No Joe part 2. He has this fight against this guy who's supposed to be a tough opponent. You know, they do a really good job of beefing him up and making him look tough. And Joe just goes in there and demolishes him, just beats the fuck out of this guy. I mean, just literally lifts the guy off his feet. He's beating him so bad. I think he KOs him in one round. And after the match, the commentators or the reporters or whoever, they stop Joe and they ask him about like his strategy for the fight. And Joe just calmly tells him why he fought the way that he fought. And then he looks over at Danpei and says, "Oh, son, let's go." And then he just turns around, and then he has the cool robe on, and the music starts playing, and it changes into like a pastel painting. That's probably one of my favorite moments in Ashita No Joe, because in that moment, Joe really looked like a champion. Like, he did, like, one thing that I kind of don't like about Hajime no Ippo and Ashita No Joe is that I feel like the main characters just struggle too much. Like, I really want to see them dominate more. Like, Ippo just takes so much punishment when he's fighting and just barely wins. And a lot of Joe's fights are kind of the same way. But this one, he just went in there and laid the guy out. And not only that, when it came time to do like the post-fight interview, like, he was calm, he had poise, he was chill, and then he just bounced. And that was probably one of my favorite moments, because in that moment he looked like a real champion. Like, he was just, he had this aura of power but also maturity, and that was like probably my favorite moment. But again, Joe just has, like, I mean, don't get it twisted. He's still, he's still crazy throughout the whole thing, but he becomes likable and crazy instead of just downright, like, God, dude, like, chill. Okay. And last but not least, it really shows that boxing is hell. I think I said this before, but Hajime no Ippo is a boxing anime that might inspire you to become a boxer, but Ashita No Joe makes it very clear that unless you are insane, you do not want to be a professional fighter. It really puts so much emphasis on just how much of a dreadful life it is. Now it's not totally bad. I feel like a better comparison or a better way of explaining of talking about it is to say it's really like heaven and hell all mixed up into one. On one end, you have the thrill of the fight, the glory. You train so hard, your body becomes just this beautiful visual masterpiece, like it was sculpted by a genius sculptor or something. You get the money, you get the women, you get the fame, you get the respect, you gain the power. It's so much good that comes with it. But on the other side, it's the rigorous, hard training. Like sometimes you can't eat what you want to eat. You literally got to starve and dehydrate yourself just to make weight. You take so much punishment and receive so much damage in the ring. Sometimes you get injured beyond repair. That's why Danpei had to stop fighting. He got one of his eyes, I guess somebody knocked his fucking eyeball out or something. He's wearing the eye patch and he got scars on his face. Several of the fighters in this either die or become punch drunk to the point where they can't even fight anymore. It just really does a very good job of showing you both sides of what it means to be a professional fighter. Like the glory, but also the pain that comes with it. In fact, I think the title of the main theme from Ashita No Joe Part 2 is Glory of Pain. Like the glory of pain, literally. And that's what I just love how it's such an accurate representation of that. It's not glorifying battle and fighting without at the very least showing you the realities of it, the injuries, the pain, the training, the lifestyle. You know, there's just one scene that just sticks out of my mind where Joe just gets up early in the morning, the alarm goes off, it's still kind of dark out, but the sun is just about to come up, and he's brushing his teeth. He looks like he's still tired, and he just gets up and starts running. And that's the reality for a lot of boxers. Like you just get up and you just, you know, just get up like 4 or 5 in the morning, just running it, just running. Like that's your life now. It's just, you know, you do all this practice and training, and you might end up in the ring for like 2 minutes or something, or like 3 or 4 rounds. Like you train this hard, all these many hours and whatnot, and you in the ring it's over in a flash. But and another one of my favorite moments is when Rikishi is going through his weight management. And he has a really hard time because he's a big guy, but he wants to fight Joe professionally. So in order for them to fight, he has to lose weight to go from, I think, a lightweight or a featherweight to a bantamweight, which is about 118 pounds. And he's a tall, like muscular guy, so he couldn't eat anything, couldn't drink any water for days on end. And you just see him just suffering, like not eat, and still training. Like he would be training inside of a fucking sauna room. Like he would have like steaming pots and stuff just to have steam everywhere to accelerate the sweating, so he could get all the liquids out of his body, just so he could have an easier time to make weight. And he was still training, and he almost lost his fucking mind doing that shit. But even like it's one thing that Danpei says that was just so cool to me. But right before Joe was about to fight Rikishi, he said that Rikishi went through hell and made it his own. And I just thought that was so awesome. Like just that pain, all that pain and suffering that Rikishi went through just to make weight. Like he made it his own. And really when he showed up to that fight, he was like a fucking demon. I mean, when you go through that much, and really that reminds me a lot of when Takamura and Hajime no Ippo had fought Brian Hawk. Like just the pain and the suffering from that grueling weight management. Just he brought all that to the ring, man, and really just became a demon. But again, that's what I love about this. It shows the harsh reality of being a boxer. You know, the weight management and the injuries and punch drunk and just all of it. Okay, now let's talk about the bad. Okay, now first, this anime is old as fuck. Now, I remember back when I first watched it, and I just remember like, man, this shit is old. this anime is dusty as hell. You know, I mean, cause it was made like in like the late '60s, early '70s, so it's pretty damn dated. So of course the animation quality isn't always fluid or very fluid, period. And it's certain things that I noticed are just like, damn, this shit is like it would be certain moments where you know how someone is supposed to be like walking, and you would see like their walking animation. I've literally seen parts where like the character is just sliding across the fucking ground, like just literally sliding instead of being like animated walking. Or I mean, it's a lot of like quality frames in this where if you pause it, it just looks so stupid. But overall it's still very watchable. I'm not saying like it's bad. I think it's an anime of that time. Like if you can stand watching like old Scooby-Doo or something, it's that sort of thing. Like it's just old. It's really just old animation. It's not bad for its time. It's just that I don't know if the Zoomers of this era can really stomach watching so many episodes of something so old. And because I know some people just don't like going back that far to watch something, and they just wouldn't be able to deal with that level of dated animation quality. So I gotta kind of put that as a strike against it. It's not his fault. I'm just saying that if this is something that you want to watch, like at this point in time in fucking 2019, you trying to watch something from 50 years ago, that is an issue. And really, again, like some quality moments, man. Like I saw one part where like the guy's eyeballs were like outside of his head. like for like 1 second, the eyeballs on the, like, it's some really like quality, like a lot of quality moments here and there if you look for it. But the animation quality does noticeably get better as it goes along, but especially with part 2. Part 2 is a totally different story. That's why when I went back to watch this, I started at part 2, because the animation quality of part 2 is actually very respectable. It's actually pretty good. It's not it's not really not bad at all. It's still from that era, I think like late 70s, 80s or whatever, but the animation quality is definitely several levels above part 1. So it's not much of an issue with part 2, but part 1 is definitely, I feel like, kind of a strike against it. If you're not used to watching older anime, that might be an issue. So, okay, now part 2. I said part 2. All right, second thing that I thought was bad about it was that it had a reluctant hero. Now, when I say reluctant hero, this is also a problem that I had with the Guyver when I watched it, and several other anime. But to me, it's really difficult for me to watch something where the main character doesn't want to fight or go along with the program. I think one of the best examples of this that really upset me was when I watched Casshern Sins. Like, he's this powerful android, but he doesn't really embrace the power that he has. Like, that sort of thing just bothers me and annoys me. And with Joe, it's like he just, like, early on, he's so resistant to being a fighter. Like, it's really not until he meets Rikishi, which is like, what is that, episode 5? I kind of forgot. It's, you got like episode 15 or something like 15, 20, somewhere around there, which isn't that far in, but still, it's just, you're watching Ashita No Joe to see a boxing anime. You want to see the main character box, not talk about how much he doesn't want to box, just go around whooping people's ass. But that was just a minor thing that I had against. And again, one of the reasons why I skipped right to part 2 when I decided to watch it again, because I just didn't want to go through all that exposition and watching him finally learn to love boxing and all that. But again, even though I say this is a bad thing about it, that's more of a personal thing. I think overall it ends up working in his favor because, again, that's part of what makes his character development so much more interesting, is that initially he didn't want to be a fighter, and that all goes back to just his lifestyle and mentality of being like this lone wolf going from place to place. Like, I'm not about fucking self-discipline and a daily regimen and rules. Fuck that shit. I'm a wild animal. I do what the fuck I want to do. Like, he's a fighter, but didn't want anything to do with boxing, because boxing really is like a lot of rules. You can't eat what you want to eat. Even when you fight, you got to wear gloves. You got a time limit. You can't do this. You can't do that. You got to train. So he didn't want to live that lifestyle. But once he met Rikishi and had a reason to want to get better and reach a certain level, he knew that he had to become professional to match him. And that's what made him fall in love with the sport. So again, I say it's bad, but it works. It's just that that's just part of having a character that has the amount of depth as Joe. It just comes with it, because it wouldn't be the same if he was like Ippo. Because if you've seen Hajime no Ippo, I mean, he takes to it immediately. Like, he meets Takamura, and Takamura, I think it's like the first or second episode, Takamura like stands up to his bullies or something and protects him from the bullies, and immediately he wants to follow in his footsteps. But again, it's kind of similar because it takes them to meet a boxer, to want to be a boxer. It's just that Joe didn't meet his inspiration until like 15, 20 episodes within it. But again, just a little minor gripe I have with it. And last but not least, not a lot of interesting rivals. Yes, I'm gonna forever compare this to Hajime no Ippo. But yeah, one of the things that I really like about Hajime no Ippo is that even outside of Ippo, the main character, there are so many other characters that are likable and interesting as well. You got Mashiba, you got Sendo, you got Takamura, you got Miyata, you've got Vorg, then you've got Manabu, and then he has his own rival. I mean, it's just characters on characters on characters. like for real. And I didn't expect that. It really just threw me for such a loop, man. That it had so many characters outside of the main characters that I would like. And I feel like with Ashita No Joe, now don't get me wrong, there are interesting rivals along the way, but it's not like with Hajime no Ippo, where almost every fighter, even some of the most insignificant ones, had such a good build up to the actual fight. Even if they don't become regulars, like, they had like a great build up that made the fight interesting. I think that's one of the things that Ashita No Joe is kind of missing, is that as far as his rivals, the ones that really stand out are Rikishi, Carlos, and Jose. I mean, of course, then you had Kim and a couple other, but again, I feel like, and Wolf, but again, they're just not of the same caliber as some of the rivals in Hajime no Ippo, as far as like being interesting like memorable, interesting characters that keep things. And really a big part of that is that in Ashita No Joe, motherfuckers be dying and becoming punch drunk and getting injured to the point where they can't even box anymore. So that's part of it too. But I just feel like that's one of the weaker aspects of it. Is that again, not a lot of rivals that are really interesting or even memorable. Again, it's probably Rikishi, Carlos, and Jose who stand out the most. But Hajime no Ippo just has they got a rival for days, like for real. But yeah, that's about it as far as like the good and the bad. Now let's do the scoring section. Let me get a sip of water. Now the story, I give it 3.5. Overall, a good story. Not very complex. Not something with a lot of political intrigue or anything like that. But it does cover a lot of different bases. It's not just sort of like a fight of the week anime. Like this week he's fighting, and that week he's fighting, like no. It really goes deep into Joe as a. I mean, he goes through so much. I mean, being this orphan who doesn't have a family or any sort of sense of attachment, ending up in prison, finally finding like someone who inspires him to be better in Danpei and Rikishi, getting out of prison and becoming a fighter and really like becoming passionate about it. And just the ups and downs that he goes through and some of the other fighters go through throughout this makes it an interesting story. It's not just about who he's fighting this week. Like he goes through a lot of like personal issues in this. And I think that's what gives the story a good amount of depth. It's not just a sort of monster of the week or fight of the week anime. I mean, he really goes through some deep psychological trauma in this. He battles injury and setback after setback. And it really deals with, like I said earlier, like in the manly tears section, just the emotional aspect of living in that kind of a world, like really like a man's world, and the honor and the respect and the pain and the camaraderie and everything that comes with it. It does a good job of just putting all that into the bowl and mixing it up and making it a good, interesting story that isn't just about fighting, but the emotional side of it all as well. And yeah, interesting through and through. And action, I give it a 3.5. Again, because the animation quality is kind of dated, especially like in part one. Some of the fight choreography isn't exactly great, but this is a pretty action packed. It's a pretty action packed anime overall. Between the actual boxing matches and Joe getting in the fights outside the ring, and then you got his other characters fighting as well, like Nishi, Rikishi, Carlos has a couple fights and all that shit. It's plenty of fighting to go around and just random fights in gyms and shit like that. Training is a good amount of action in this. It's just that again in part one, the old animation quality can kind of hinder what could have been much better action sequences. Animation, gotta give it a 2.5 out of 5, and that's mostly because again part one is just so old. It's just old as hell. It's just so old. It's just, I can't give it, like, again, for that time. Man, like those people must have thought, oh man, this is beautiful. But now it's just old now, so I can't sit here and act like it's a fucking 4 or 5 or nothing. But again, man, like no joke, Ashita No Joe Part 2, that is beautiful. I mean, like I said earlier, man, the art style and art direction particularly in part 2 is really good. So I get an animation 2.5, but it's mostly for part 1, which is the bulk of it. part 1 is 79 episodes, and part 2 is only 47. But part 2 makes up for it in a big way. It's worth it. It's worth the long, dusty trail. And music, I give it a 2.5. It's overall decent, but again, it's one of those things that gets better in part 2, and part 1 kind of drags this area down a little bit in that it's, again, not bad music, but it's just like okay music that fits the actual anime. But in part 2, there were actually a couple songs that I actually found myself going and looking for the OST and downloading those tracks, like at least about 3 or 4 tracks. So again, part 2 just kind of takes that area and just does a much better job. Comedy, I give it a 2 out of 5. Again, this is not really a comedy anime, so it's not really a bad thing. But it's still, like I said earlier, like the kids, the children, they definitely add some lightheartedness to the overall brutality. Like, I mean, to something that is overall kind of brutal and dark and can be very depressing and violent. I feel like the time that Joe spends with the children and their involvement and their little hijinks really kind of lightens the mood a lot, and it's just so adorable watching them interact with Joe and interact with each other, and just the, you know, how concerned they are about Joe and the little pranks and stuff they try to do. So they do add a sort of comedy element to it that is really helps balance out the anime as a whole, and is really definitely what I would consider a solid part of what makes Ashita No Joe so good. Like definitely a smaller part, but still, like, those little lighthearted, funny moments with the children does add something of worth to the anime. And I mean, just I was recently watching the episode, and it was just a small moment, but the little girl, she grabbed the jump rope that Joe uses to jump rope with, and then she started jump roping with him. Like, I just thought, like, little shit like that is just so cute. Like, I just love stuff like that. Like, it's just totally moe, and it really does add something, like just a nice spice to the overall mix, man. And Ichi, 0 out of 5. This is a man's world. There ain't no titties, ain't no oh, I bumped into you and landed on your chest. None of that. It is pretty much no sex whatsoever. You got a few cute girls and Yoko and Noriko, but even then, I get, like, Joe is just totally focused on boxing. He's not into, he doesn't really show much of an interest in girls throughout, so it's not a lot of sex or any Ichi whatsoever in this. Which, again, not a bad thing. I just put that as a category because I know I'm gonna end up reviewing. I'm probably gonna end up reviewing some, you know what I mean. But yeah. Now the overall score, and because I watched this before, and when I've always kind of ranked anime after I watched it. So instead of having to think of a way instead of having to think of a score for it overall, like, now I could just go back to my old score. So I looked at it and I noticed that I gave it a score of 9 out of 10. And I'm not saying that it's wrong, but it made me realize, like, man, like, it must have really had a big impact on me when I watched it. Because I feel like when I score something, it's two things that determine it. And I think that it's the overall quality, like I said before, like story, action, animation, music, comedy, Ichi, and all that shit. But I think it's also just the time and place and just how it makes me feel when I watched it at that time. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, Gurren Lagann, that's my 10. That is my 10. But if I watched it, like, right now, would I still feel like it's a 10? Probably not. I might be able to find more flaws and say, well, you know, it's a 9. I might give it a 9 or not, but I'm not gonna take that 10 away because I feel like in that moment when you watch it that first time, I feel like it's something special about that. It's something special about your first time watching something that you'll never be able to recreate. Never. You'll never be able to get that again. And that's why I stick with my original score of 9 out of 10. But watching it recently, I could see an 8 or 8.5, but I'm gonna stick with the 9. That's because that's really how I felt when I first watched it. And it made sense. It's just that now I've already seen it, so everything is old to me. I already know. But even I still enjoyed it, but I've seen it before, so it doesn't have that same impact as it initially had. So I gotta give Ashita No Joe a 9 out of 10, man. I mean, for all its flaws, it's old, it's old and dusty until about part 2, but it really is a special, beautiful anime. I mean, it really no surprise why you see so many different anime take certain things from it to this day, like the cross counter and well, spoiler alert, but the ending, the whole ending. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it's definitely one of those anime that has influenced and continues to influence anime to this day, man. But yeah, man, this is really a good one, but it's definitely an event. Like you gotta be patient with it. Like because I can remember when I first watched it, man. I was like, because I kept hearing about it, and it was like, I was kind of skeptical, but I was patient and I stuck with it, and I reaped the rewards. I experienced the benefits, or however you want to. I enjoyed it, and again, it's one that initially you might, again, it just takes a little bit of patience, but once you get into it, you start to understand like, oh, this shit is dope, and then before you know it, you're hooked. But I cannot stress this enough. Part 2, God, like part 1 is good. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like part 2, man, is really where it shines, because it fixes the one thing that I really just kind of holds the first one back, and it's age, how dusty it looks sometimes. But part 2 just looks so fresh and beautiful and kino. It's absolute anime kino, but you're not gonna enjoy it unless you watch part 1 as well. So Ashita No Joe as a whole, just 9 out of 10, man. It's really great. And that was my anime review for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have already watched it, hope you enjoyed my commentary of this awesome anime. And if you haven't, go out and watch that shit now. Or don't. Watch something that came out in 2019. I don't give a fuck. See you guys